Okay. Hello, 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 everyone. Sorry, I forgot my lights again. Okay, here we are again for another Friday Love Your Liver live stream. This is an all subscriber Q&A. So if you're here live and you want to ask questions, I do go in order from the top down in questions. So those of you who got here early and got your questions in, looks like Monica was very active very early. Hi, Monica. And if you want to get your chat or your question priority, we do have super chats enabled. So that's a whole nother thing where you can donate to the channel and get your question answered earlier. Top of the list is what I'm saying. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Dr. Garrett Smith, also known as the nutrition detective around these parts and social media. We've had some interesting things going on. Some people asking me if I'm getting shadow banned and other stuff because they're seeing tweets disappear from their feed and other stuff like that. Vimeo, the Vimeo debacle where Vimeo canceled my paid account of all private videos that were not accessible to the wider internet. It's getting interesting, right? They say when you're over the target, that's when you get all the flack. What's happening here? Interesting. So, my website is nutritiondetective.com. And if you are interested in the Madness of Modern Nutrition, which is a free course of mine, you can go to madnessofmodernnutrition.com or you can go to members.nutritiondetective.com. And that's the way to get into the Nutrition Detective Network, which is where the Love Your Liver program, which is what I'm known for, is found. Okay, so now that we got all that out of the way, let's get into some questions. So Monica's first question. Hi, Dr. Smith. Could you please explain why you don't agree with the neurotransmitters theory that you mentioned in some of your live streams? Thanks for your work. Well, you're very welcome. Since all the neurotransmitter stuff has come out, how has human mental health been overall? Let's just look at the effectiveness, right? Theories don't matter, right? Is what they're saying and the applications they're saying to do it for, are they working? I would say no. Like the serotonin theory of depression or happiness or mood is garbage. Now, here's a very interesting thing. Let me see if I can find one website that talks about it in a short fashion. Here we go. Let's just here we go. So I've talked about this before with dopamine and Parkinson's, which is a topic that is dear to my heart because my mother and several of her relatives in the past, the Parkinson's has happened several times in my bloodline on my mother's side. My mother has Parkinson's-like syndrome, which we're working on. I can put it this way in terms of what we're doing, neurodegenerative diseases. Those are deep. Like to get out of those, people can sometimes get out of them if they get them really early, if they've settled in pretty deep and the toxicity is pretty deep. What you can do, I mean, I can tell you, we went to a neurologist to get her, assessment of all this stuff. And she was amazed at my mom's situation. She was asking her about falls, knock on wood, no falls of any note. And she was asking her if she was on meds. No. Basically, we have halted the progress on my mom. And I do think we may be reversing it slightly. But are we ever going to get out of it? I don't know. The world is so toxic. It's hard. It's going to be hard when somebody's that deep to get out of it. But anyway, what I want to go over is the theory of Parkinson's and dopamine and dopaldehyde. And we'll get into this with other neurotransmitters too. So dopamine, almost all, as far as I know, all of your neurotransmitters, I could be wrong on this, but as far as I know, all the neurotransmitters break down into aldehydes. And you're probably like going, what? Aldehydes aren't good. You should know this. If you don't know this, aldehydes are not good. So let's just go into, just real quick, let's go DOPAL, Parkinson's theory, PubMed. The catecholaldehyde hypothesis for the pathogenesis of, well, geez, this is a complicated title. The catecholaldehyde hypothesis for the pathogenesis of catecholaminergic neurodegeneration, what we know and what we do not know. Okay, so I'm going to put this link in there. That's a mouthful, right? But they simplify it in the first sentence from what I saw. So they go into this big name, 3,4-dihydroxyphenylacetaldehyde. 3,4-dihydroxyphenylacetaldehyde. Acetaldehyde is what ethanol, alcohol, breaks down to. That is what causes all the damage from drinking alcohol. Okay? The shortened name for that is DOPAL, short for dopaldehyde. DOPAL is the focus of the catecholaldehyde hypothesis for the pathogenesis, the creation of Parkinson's disease and other Lewy body diseases. They say here DOPAL is autotoxic in that it can harm the same cells in which it is produced. Wait, what? What? Hey, haven't I talked here about how bile is so toxic that it can damage the very liver cells that produce it? And I'm going to tell you that ALDH, aldehyde dehydrogenase, the main enzyme that breaks down aldehydes into acids, is very connected to bile production. The better your ALDH runs, the better your bile is produced. That doesn't mean go out and take a bunch of herbs that increase your ALDH. You're going to ruin yourself doing that. Don't do it. This is not a game. You decide to go out and play God with PubMed and think you're going to fix yourself. We got 4 years of mistakes in the Love Your Liver program that I figured out mostly myself by experimenting on myself. And you're probably going to go through the exact same research using the exact same keywords, and you're going to make all the same mistakes. And you're not going to have probably as quick a recognition as I did of these things. Maybe you do. Maybe you'll get stuck in a mistake for years and not make progress. That's why I say this is not a game. But so dopamine breaks down into dopaldehyde. And this dopaldehyde can damage the very same cells that produce it. Neurotransmitters turn into aldehydes. What are neurotransmitters then? What breaks down into aldehydes? What breaks down into acetaldehyde? Ethanol. And they're saying here that dopamine breaks down into dopaldehyde, which has acetaldehyde in the name. Does this sound like something good for you? Or does this sound like a waste product? Aldehydes sound like a waste product to me. So we've got the dopaldehyde, the dopamine theory, where they get into basically the very neurotransmitter. So then what do they do in Parkinson's? What do they give people? They give them levodopa and carbidopa, which are forms of dopamine. Now, what they're saying in this dopaldehyde theory of Parkinson's is that the dopaldehyde is what's causing the damage. Okay? So if somebody were to say acetaldehyde, the breakdown product of alcohol, is what's causing the damage, is the solution to give the person more alcohol? Is it? If you take in more alcohol and the acetaldehyde is what's made from the alcohol, and you have let's say you have a slow ALDH that is not breaking down the acetaldehyde, which is exactly what happens. This is known in what they call the Asian glow or the Asian flush. 50% of Asians have genetically slow ALDH. And this is why if you've ever known an Asian person or a person of any other, genetic heritage who has what they call an alcohol allergy, what is happening to them is their ALDH sucks for whatever reason, genetic or otherwise, and they're building up acetaldehyde in their system very, very quickly, and they're getting the flushed face, and they're getting very giggly and very drunk on very little alcohol. Okay, that's a sign their ALDH is slow. So what they're saying here is that dopamine turning into dopaldehyde is getting blocked at dopaldehyde. The ALDH runs slow. They're building up dopaldehyde. That is damaging the very cells that produce dopamine. So then what does modern medicine do? Modern medicine says, oh, we think you don't have enough dopamine, so we're going to give you synthetic dopamine. What does that break down to, class? That breaks down into dopaldehyde. Can you get rid of dopaldehyde? These people can't. They're not good at it. That's why they have a problem. Oh, wait, sorry, I missed this sentence here. Let's go into this sentence on this paper. Normally, DOPAL is detoxified by aldehyde dehydrogenase mediated conversion to 3,4-dihydroxyphenylacetic acid, DOPAC, which rapidly exits the neurons. Wait. So wait, let me just check something. For those of you out there who are into chemistry or who are into searching, I don't know if I'll be able to find your comment. But if we have something that turns in, so we have normally there's like alcohol, which is ethanol. Ethanol turns into acetaldehyde. Acetaldehyde turns into acetic acid. Retinol turns into vitamin A, what people think of as animal vitamin A. Retinol, an alcohol, breaks down into retinaldehyde, breaks down into retinoic acid. Methanol breaks down into formaldehyde, breaks down into formic acid. Okay, so you see the pattern: alcohol, aldehyde, acid. Why am I doubting the neurotransmitter theories? We have dopamine, which this is what I'm wondering if somebody out there can figure out. Is dopamine an alcohol? Is dopamine in the alcohol form? Okay, it's not alcohol like ethanol, but I mean an alcohol like retinol, methanol. Is dopamine an alcohol? Because it breaks down into dopaldehyde, and they just said it breaks down into an acid. So it's following the same pattern. Do you see how I just don't think this neurotransmitter theory is, and that's why it's never worked? So we have, and then here, so how is alcohol connected? So how is dopamine connected to alcohol? Well, here we have a paper called Alcoholism and the Dopaminergic System, a review. Let me put this link down here. And they say right here, dopamine receptor agonists, so they stimulate dopamine receptors. Is dopamine an alcohol? Well, this is interesting. Dopamine receptor agonists reduce alcohol consumption, whereas antagonists in general show the opposite effect. Moreover, quantitative trait loci studies in animals suggest that the DRD2 gene and the region proximate to this locus, closer to this receptor, I believe they're saying, is a chromosomal hotspot for alcohol-related disorders. So now they're saying dopamine is extremely connected to alcohol-related disorders, dopamine receptors. Is it because dopamine's an alcohol? Because it does break down into an aldehyde and an acid, just like all the other alcohols do. Vitamin E is an alcohol, tocopherol, tocotrienol. Vitamin D, cholecalciferol, calcitriol, they're all alcohols. I just found out the other day that a lot of the alcohols go through the cytochrome P450 system, which is a detox system. Why is vitamin D going through a detox system? Does that not interest you? Why is the mainstream promoting everybody to take vitamin D supplements now? In the alternative community, They're pushing vitamin D. Do you know that the one supplement that Fauci said to say is vitamin D? Why are they all saying the same thing? Do you think they have your best interest in mind? Do you really? All these things are alcohols, aldehydes, acids. Do we actually think aldehydes are so known to be toxic? So we can go. Sorry, I didn't finish the neurotransmitters. So I don't know if I put this link. I'm just gonna put this link again. Am I saying I know everything about this? No. How could I figure this out when the science is so messed up to begin with? So let's just go over this paper. The title of this paper. Waiting for it to load. Okay. Biogenic, aldehyde mediated mechanisms of toxicity in neurodegenerative disease. Biogenic, what does that mean? Made by the body. Made by the body. Aldehyde mediated, so controlled by aldehydes. Aldehydes made by the body, controlling the mechanisms of toxicity in neurodegenerative disease. Wait. So people in the inner circle have heard me talk about this before, and I've talked about, well, I'm not going to get into that right now. But let's just read these let's just read this abstract, most of it. Elevated levels of aldehyde intermediates are implicated as factors in several pathological conditions, including Parkinson's disease. Here we go. The biogenic aldehydes produced from dopamine, norepinephrine, which is noradrenaline, and serotonin are known to be toxic, generate reactive oxygen species, and or cause aggregation of proteins such as alpha-synuclein. Polyunsaturated lipids, so the good old PUFAs, undergo oxidative decomposition to produce biogenic aldehydes, including 4-hydroxy-2-nonenal and malondialdehyde. That's going to become very, very important in the future. These lipid aldehydes, so fatty acid aldehydes, some including an alpha-beta unsaturated carbonyl, target important proteins such as alpha-synuclein, proteasome degradation, and G-protein coupled signaling. The final sentence. Overproduction of biogenic aldehydes is a hypothesized factor in neurodegeneration. Preventing their formation or scavenging may provide means for neuroprotection. Let's go boost our serotonin. Do you see? Do you see now? You start boosting these things that break down into aldehydes. And what happens if you can't clear aldehydes? Do you know that malondialdehyde they just talked about is considered an irreversible inhibitor of aldehyde dehydrogenase? Let me get that paper. Are PUFAs bad? Yes, they break down into malondialdehyde. What's the best way to avoid PUFAs? Avoid oils and stop adding fat to your food. That's the easiest way. Were PUFAs a big problem before industrial oil production? Probably not. We start feeding our animals wrong, and we start using oils. So, eat properly fed animals. Don't worship the fat on animals. And don't eat extracted oils except minimally, absolutely minimally. It doesn't seem that hard. Now, for those of you undertypes who are underweight, you got different rules because you're deeper down. That's a whole nother topic. Unders need more care, and they're going to take longer. You underweight folks in general, if you're underweight not by your own creation, you got longer to go. It's just the way it is. But malondialdehyde shuts down your ALDH. You shut down your ALDH, all these aldehydes just float around in your system. They don't break down very well, and then they cause damage. And even mainstream medicine is saying your own neurotransmitters break down into things that damage your own nervous system and your brain. They're never going to tell you that, right? Why aren't they telling you, like, here's the idea. Don't purposely try to boost your serotonin, which breaks down into waste products and then can damage your own brain. How about if we speed up? Actually, sorry, let me say that again. How about if we figure out how to not slow down ALDH? This is a critical difference. Some of you are going to go out there and look on PubMed and you're going to be like, oh, I found this that speeds up ALDH, and I found this that speeds up ALDH, and I found this that speeds up ALDH. Things that short-term speed up ALDH, long-term slow it down. It's called the duration paradox. You will do more harm than good. Think of a car that's not running right. If a car's not running right, it has problems. So if you have health issues, you have problems. Do you go and put a turbocharger on a car that doesn't run right? I mean, you can. You can go and try to take supplements that speed up things. You're going to boost your immune system. You're going to speed up your ALDH. You're going to initiate and cause a bunch of bile dumping. You can go and do these things. You can put a turbocharger on a piece of garbage. What does it do? It burns out the engine faster. And then you go slower. So what should we do? We should tune up the engine, fix the alignment, replace parts that are crap. You fix the basic model of the car first. And then you'll probably have a car that's running so nicely you never even think about the turbocharger. See what I'm saying? This is what we do. We are not trying to boost anything. Boosting things, it's like the war on cancer. You're going to fight your own body. You're going to boost your immune system. This is garbage thinking. Stop it. You are trying to give the body what it needs. You are trying to help the body get rid of what it doesn't want. You are trying to facilitate the removal of old stored toxins. Think of it as like a big thing in tune-ups, right? They're going to clean the gunk out of your car. This is what the gunk is stuck there. You have gunk stuck in your body fat. You have gunk, fatty liver, stuck in your liver. We are trying to clean that out. You put better fluids in your car. You clean the gunk out of the engine. And you put the right parts to replace the old parts that are broken or missing back in your car. It's the same thing. It's a system. We fix the system. And not all cars need exactly the same parts. And not all cars break down in the same places. And not all cars have been exposed to the same weather conditions and crappy fluids. So we have to, figure these things out. What makes your car run better? What makes it run worse? This is the approach. Okay. So I think I covered the neurotransmitters thing. Basically, what I'm saying is, let me go down to the bottom, see if anybody did anything. Okay, I see the super chat. I will get to that. So, yeah, if anybody has, I see both of them. But if anybody found, I didn't find the, let me go see dopamine structure alcohol. I haven't looked this up. Under drugrehab.com, alcohol and dopamine. Does alcohol release dopamine? Birds of a feather, maybe. I don't know. But anybody who's into chemistry, if you can go and look at dopamine and see if it is an alcohol structure. I do see Pierre will be very interested. It is an amine, catecholamine. Here we go. Alcohol is a particularly, the liver doctor, whoever this guy is, alcohol is a particularly lethal toxin that attaches itself to the dopamine neurotransmitter and sets off the compulsion. I don't know how true that is, but again, birds of a feather. Alcohol breaks down into aldehydes and acids. Dopamine, whatever structure it is, breaks down into aldehydes and acids. We just went over this. Doesn't this seem strange? So let's move on. Okay, so Ramon was first on the super chats. Thank you, Ramon. Nice to have you here. Hi, Dr. Smith. Why do you say a cold is a bile dump? How do they connect? Is it better to fast or eat while you have one? As always, thanks. Well, you are welcome and thank you. So, when you get sick, like why all of a sudden, what? First of all, if it is true that the liver stores toxins, which it does, your body fat stores toxins, your liver gets rid of toxins into the bile. And let me just go and let me just see if I can find anything on bile and the flu. No. But here's an interesting paper I just found. Increased serum bile acid level is associated with high-risk coronary artery plaques, so that's heart disease, in an asymptomatic population. They don't have any symptoms, but their arteries are calcifying. Detected by coronary computed tomography angiography. So let me just put this link in there. Increased serum bile acid associated with the process of heart disease. Shocking. Who would have ever talked about this? How would that bile get into the blood? Subclinical cholestasis, leaking toxic bile into the blood via liver injury. So, well, let's go into, I've talked about let's just post this paper. So I hope we're all in agreement here that the very popular virus that went around, supposedly, is the flu. It is the flu. So when I post this link, high levels of serum bile acids in COVID-19 patients on hospital admission. High levels of serum bile acids in COVID-19 patients on hospital admission. What am I telling you here that causes the symptoms of the flu? Bile dumping, being released, something triggers. So this is where we can get into all sorts of things, but bile is triggered to be dumped. There could be a bunch of causes of it. You ever notice, like here's an example, if this is what happens. You ever go where you've been working really hard at work, or you've been really stressed for whatever reason, but work would be a common one. And you're going and you're going and you're going, or you're studying at school. You're studying, stress. And then all of a sudden you take the test or you finish the project and you're going to go take a vacation. Or you're doing something that is a lot less stressful. When do you get sick? Like a day or two or three into the resting and relaxation, the vacation, right? What happened? You finally released all that bile that was not coming out before for whatever reason. Why would stress? I mean, if I don't believe in virus theory. I don't. Viruses are markers of toxicity in the system. if they weren't just accidentally like formed in the method that they use to try to analyze them. Okay. So high levels of serum bile in COVID-19 patients on hospital admission. I'm not finding anything on influenza, but what is what is long COVID? Why would there be long COVID? Because the bile that you remember, bile is like hot lava. It is damaging everything it touches. It damages the cells that make it. It damages the little bile ducts in the liver. It damages the big bile ducts. It damages your gut. Leaky gut is bile damage to the liver. Celiac, eating away at the villi, is caused by toxic bile, and gluten in celiac people causes more bile dumping. If it goes back up into your stomach, it eats away at your stomach. This is ulcers. This is GERD. This is reflux. Reflux, things getting pushed back up. That's bile. Reflux is bile. It eats holes in everything. So if you had somebody, let's just say that the flu was a massive toxic bile dump triggered by, there could be a bunch of things. Could it be electromagnetics? Sure. Could it be the weather turning cold? Why does everybody get sick when the weather turns cold? Why? Well, not everybody gets sick, but why do so many people get sick? Is that something that could spread among people? Yeah, it would spread. And would different people react to it at a little different speed? Like one person gets sick right away and one person gets sick 3 days later, 4 days later, 5 days later? Sure. Why not? Person A can run faster than person B. We are different. We are not all the same. People are like, why doesn't it happen to everybody at the same time? That is not using your brain. People are different. So you dump bile. It eats whole. Think of it as the flood. The bile dump is the flood, like, right? So there's heavy rains. Heavy rains, that's the bile dumping. And then you have the floods on the ground. And the floods go and they damage stuff. And then people go, well, why after the bile dump's gone, why doesn't it all just go back to normal? Do you understand what a flood does? After the flood has receded, do all the houses that were destroyed and all the roads that were destroyed and all that stuff, do they just fix themselves right away? Are they just back to normal the next day? No, they're not. There's damage. Sometimes major damage. And it's going to take a while to fix it. And then at the same time, let's say people are doing things trying to be healthy that are specifically making their bile more toxic. And so they're doing their normal bile releases every day. And the toxic, think of it as like picking a scab, right? Let's say you get an injury and you get a cut. That's the big bile dump, right? But then because you have to eat every day, and maybe you're doing things that are extra toxic, now all of a sudden you have a cut. What does it take to keep that cut from healing? All you got to do is pick the scab. Is that the same damage that the cut was? No. It's a lot less than the cut. All you got to do is pick it a little bit, and then it takes forever to heal. Do you see where I'm going with this? This is why long COVID can take such a long time, is because nobody understands the bile connection. You following me? So a cold would be kind of like a small bile dump. It's just a cold. The idea they want you to, the Rockefeller idea of medicine needs you to be a victim. You're either in a war that you have to fight against your own body, or you're a victim of things from the outside. I mean, are we victims of toxins? Yes. But do they want to talk about that? No. Remember toxic bile papers? I went over those. The Rockefeller University published papers on toxic bile 1905 and 1906. And there's you can go on PubMed and type in toxic bile. This is not a totally new concept. And then if you want to read a really good paper, on the connection between vitamin A, which would be dumped in bile. Read Anthony Mawson's paper. Liver damage and exposure to toxic concentrations of endogenous, made from within, retinoids, vitamin A, in the pathogenesis of COVID-19 disease, hypothesis. Let me just read a couple lines from this. Severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus 2, as in SARS-CoV-2, which was changed to COVID, has a marked tropism or an attraction to something. For the biliary tract, the bile duct tract, it damages the bile ducts and hepatocytes, liver cells, and can lead to liver decompensation, cirrhosis, and sepsis. What if the bile dumping was what caused all that? The pathogenesis, the creation of liver damage and its association with damage to the lung, heart, and brain, and to the other protein manifestations of COVID-19 disease are not fully understood. In particular, tissue damage from thinning and leaky blood vessels appears to result from an inflammatory response to the virus rather than the virus itself. Wait, so we're talking about blood vessels getting damaged by something, an inflammatory response. What am I telling you goes into the blood if you leak it and then it damages everything it touches like hot lava? Let's read that again. So imagine the hot lava leaking into the blood. In particular, tissue damage from thinning and leaky blood vessels. Does it sound like leaky gut? Oh, let me keep going. Appears to result from an inflammatory, something's causing inflammation, an inflammatory response to the virus rather than the virus itself. The virus triggered something that is causing an inflammatory response rather than the virus itself. It's not the virus itself. Interesting. This article outlines a new hypothesis of the nature of the inflammatory factor responsible for tissue damage in COVID-19. Review of the literature reveals that COVID-19 disease closely resembles an endogenous form of hypervitaminosis A. Let me simplify that last part. It closely resembles a vitamin A toxicity state that is created from inside the body. Where would all that vitamin A come from all of a sudden? Oh, I don't know. Stored in the liver? Maybe. We propose that COVID virus-induced liver damage causes retinoic acid, Accutane, Retin-A, alitretinoin, and stored retinol esters to be released into the circulation in toxic concentrations, unbound to protein with resulting damage to organs, including the lungs, heart, blood vessels, and skin. Several lines of evidence support this model of disease causation. Subject to testing, strategies for the effective treatment and prevention of COVID-19 could include targeting the action and accumulation, storage of retinoids. And we just went over how there was increased serum bile in the people, highly increased serum bile in the people who went to the hospital with COVID. COVID is the flu. The flu is just a stronger form of a cold. So therefore, if one mechanism links them all, it's the same mechanism in all of them. It's just varying. I mean, isn't it funny how they're like modern medicine? First of all, they can't cure the flu. Secondly, they have these lists of symptoms to try to help you distinguish between the cold and the flu because they can't really tell themselves. So are they really different? Yeah, that's that. So is it better to fast or eat while you have one? That would get a little bit into the over and under types. Overs tend to feel better if they eat. Unders tend to feel better if they don't eat. But I would definitely, one of the big things that people have challenges with is listening to their body. If you are sick and you don't feel like eating, then don't. If you are sick and you are very, very hungry, or you just feel like you have this gut feeling that you need to eat, eat. This is super complicated, right? Now, when I had whatever it was, when it came around, and yes, I went and I got tested for antibodies, and yes, I had them, whatever that means. Antibodies, if you don't know this, antibodies are markers of toxicity. Antibodies bind to toxins. Your body makes antibodies and binding proteins to bind to toxins. So when you have viruses, what do they usually test for? They test for antibodies. Antibodies bind to what again? Antibodies bind to poisons or toxins. You see what I'm saying? If you have viruses and you have antibodies, which is what they test for, you have toxicity running around your system. Where did that toxicity all of a sudden come from? Your liver? Bile leaking into your blood? How do you reactivate a virus? Is it just toxic bile leaking into your blood again? And then they test it and they go, hey, here it is again. Same thing. Well, you have the same toxic bile. Okay. This is the part that a lot of people don't want to understand, is that there's that saying, you are the cause of and the solution to all of your problems. You are the cause of and the solution to all of your problems. Now, think about that in terms of health. If your health problems are all stemming from toxicity that you have stored and toxicity that you are consuming, rubbing on your skin, breathing, whatever, and you have nutrient deficiencies, specifically very, very important minerals, you are the cause of that. And this is the reason. And so some people are gonna be like, oh my God, I didn't cause this. I was born jaundiced, or I was given Accutane by my parents or whatever. It doesn't matter anymore. That part's over. You have to take responsibility for your own health. And if you're here listening to me, you're probably a person who's going to do that. I don't want people in the Love Your Liver program or coming to work with me who just want a magic pill. This is not magic pill land. This is work your ass off and learn what made you sick and pay attention to what makes you feel better and pay attention to what makes you feel worse and adjust accordingly land. We are going to teach you how to learn how your body works and what helps you that may not be the same thing that helps your sister or your mom. When everybody started mixing people of different genetics from different continents and all this stuff, you have no idea what genetics you got for certain things. You could be one of 6 people in your family who reacts differently to something. And everybody else in your family is like, oh, we all feel great when we eat this. And you're like, I feel terrible. It's not your fault. But if you keep eating it because you're like, well, everybody else does it, right? What if you grew up with your mom's cooking, but you got your grandpa's genetics that doesn't get along with the stuff your mom feeds you? Could that be why you've been sick all your life? Sure. Now that you're out living on your own, what do? Well, don't eat like your mom fed you if it makes you sick. So anyway, what I did when I did not feel good, I didn't eat. I had a gut feeling I did not want to eat, which is not normal for me. I'm normally a big eater. I did not feel like eating, and I was very nauseous. What is nausea? Nausea is bile in your stomach. What do Europeans usually do if they have nausea? They take some charcoal. What is charcoal really good at doing? Soaking up bile. Why would charcoal cure nausea? Put those together. So I did take some charcoal because and people will be like, but I don't poop well when I have charcoal. Well, I wanted to soak up the bile. I wasn't eating much. I wanted to soak up the bile, and I did. Didn't poop a whole lot for a couple days, but it all comes back. For those of you who really have constipation problems, if you start messing with charcoal, you're not going to poop. You better be real careful with charcoal. I have like 13 or 15 articles on charcoal in the Love Your Liver program. I don't take these subjects lightly. When I say you're going to learn things, that's what we do in the program. Is I am teaching you. I am teaching people how to fish. I'm not giving you a fish. Even when I give people recommendations on minerals based on the blood and hair testing I do, I'm still giving them a range. I'm telling them, you don't go higher than this for now. Here's your limit. But we're going to experiment up to there, and you're going to figure out what the best dose is for you. Because why in the world, this is what internet gurus do. Everybody needs to take 30 milligrams or 50 milligrams of zinc picolinate a day. Or whatever zinc. They're using, COVID people were doing zinc sulfate, which is just like the worst. The worst. Sulfate slows down your ALDH system. And all these CUFID experts were saying, take zinc sulfate. And I'm like, that's weird. It's like the worst form of zinc, I swear. You want to slow down your detox systems, just use sulfates. Go ahead. I think I'm done on that rant. But fasting or not fasting would be depending upon how you feel. What we've seen, what I believe, is if you are the type, there comes a time when you suppress symptoms. Yes. That's what hospitals do to keep people alive. They suppress symptoms like, I don't know, shutting down bile release. Like if you go look up sepsis and serum bile is what kills people. Bile in their blood, toxic bile in their blood is what kills people with sepsis. Wow, it can be so, I want you to think about that. It can be so abrupt, the liver damage and the release of toxic bile into the blood, that it could kill you. It's a pretty big deal, right? So why would we, if we had a little significant bile dump, why couldn't we get a cold? And if we have one that's a bit bigger, the flu. And if everybody's running around, fear and stress can cause bile dumping. So then all of a sudden you have a population-wide fear campaign, and everybody's scared to death of getting something. And then they think they get it, or they do something to trigger bile dumping. And then there's not only what's happening inside of them, but there's the addition of this. Mainstream media, anybody? Fear campaigns? So, but what I've found is that people who take care of the, so there's the people who go out and they take every supplement under the sun. Lots of things that I would say slow down your detox system. They're going and taking quercetin and elderberries and all super amounts of polyphenols and super amounts of all these things that I would normally say not to take. And they say, ooh, I squashed my symptoms in like 2 days. And I'm like, you squashed that toxic bile dump. Sure. And then they often get sick again. And then they do the same thing again. And then they get sick again and they do the same thing again. And you start wondering, why do you keep getting sick? And maybe it's your liver's trying to get rid of some garbage and you're just shutting it down every time. I could show you that almost everything on the alternative lists of supplements and everything on the conventional medications shuts down ALDH, or it shuts down bile production. And all of a sudden, symptoms go away. Weird. What was causing the symptoms then? Bile. So, you can go and shut it down. You can go and shut it down. Does that mean, it doesn't mean, the people I've seen who ride it out, who take care of themselves, and who do minimal things to shut down the dump, they get rid of a ton of toxic bile. And oftentimes, once they recover, they are better than they were before because they just got rid of all that toxic bile. Other people who are constantly shutting down their bile production, or they really do it hardcore when they get sick, and they wonder why they keep getting sick, or they got to take more and more supplements to shut it down. This is the path that they go down. This is why people end up on 30 pills a day, 50 pills a day. Powder this, powder, the pills get obnoxious after a while, right? So then they go to the powders that have like 50 ingredients. So you can just take a giant scoop, put it in your smoothie with all your polyphenols. It's not the way. So anyway, okay. Eminem asks, I see the other super chat. So Eminem, thank you for the super chat. Let me get to this. I have sleep apnea and use CPAP therapy, though I'm terrible with compliance. Is CPAP therapy harmful or beneficial? Is there an alternative approach? I feel much better when using it, more alert and rested. Well, first of all, make sure you clean that thing well, because it's going to, those things want to grow all sorts of stuff, but you want to try to clean it without being toxic. That's kind of one of the tough things. CPAP, the big thing about sleep apnea, and this is one thing that people, and I'm not judging, the big thing with sleep apnea is typically weight. If you are carrying extra weight, the chances of sleep apnea, snoring, all that stuff goes through the roof. So there's that. Then there's just breathing in general, air quality. So like if you're tending to be allergic to things in your house, or you're eating things that tend to make lots of mucus and phlegm, like dairy. Dairy is so well known for making mucus and phlegm. Like that was when I was 15 years old. One of the very first things I observed in my health was I would drink a glass of milk, and about halfway through it, I could feel the snot building up in my sinuses. Certain things. Why would we make mucus and phlegm? Why would drinking milk or eating other highly allergic foods like eggs cause mucus and phlegm? What would your body, where did you just put in the toxins? You put them in right here. What's one of the quickest routes the body could get rid of stuff through making extra fluids that you would hopefully spit out or blow out? Well, that would be mucus and phlegm. Key thing here, a tip to all of you. If you have fluids coming out of you, help your body to get rid of them. Your body is trying to dump garbage. Think about this. I often see with neurodegenerative conditions, you often see this with like MS and stuff like that. People get seborrheic dermatitis on their scalp, and it's coming out. The skin and the crust is yellow. They have yellow, crusty stuff coming out of their scalp. What do you think is trying to detox? Do you think maybe it's their brain? One of my mom's biggest problems is she makes tons of saliva. What's trying to detox? Detox through the scalp, detox through the saliva, detox through the snot. Gosh, it couldn't have anything to do with those aldehydes that are in the brain, could it? Maybe. So the big thing with breathing, like I know one of my issues with, sometimes the kids say I snore a little bit. I have a gigantic tongue. I know I do. I'm not going to stick it out here, but I have a gigantic tongue. So sometimes if that gets in the wrong position, like it's not hard for me to do that. So yeah, there can be physiological issues. The weight is a big issue. If you look up apnea, and let's just look up apnea. I'm just going to type in obesity. I'm not saying anything about you. I'm just saying we're just going to find a paper here. Obesity and obstructive sleep apnea. So there is a very high prevalence of obstructive sleep apnea in obese individuals and a high prevalence of obesity in patients with obstructive sleep apnea. The pathophysiology of obstructive sleep apnea is intimately linked to obesity. Anatomic and functional considerations of the pharyngeal airway, the CNS, central obesity, and leptin are likely interact in the development of obstructive sleep apnea in obese individuals. So we get into that. That's no judgment. It's just it's mechanism. I mean, they actually have a theory. I think they call it the fat collar of sleep apnea, which is where if you carry too much weight on your neck, it's like compressing. If you're laying in certain positions, especially when people lay on their back, they snore, right? So if you had too much fat, it's gonna push on your neck and compress the airways, right? Because the airways are just a tube. You compress the tube smaller, you make it harder to breathe. So then if you combine, let's think about this. Sleep apnea goes, if somebody is, let's say, obese, they're probably an overtype and they're probably toxic. And some of the foods they ate are probably causing them to become toxic. So if they continue eating the same foods that are making them toxic, which is making them obese, then they continue to have sleep apnea. So our goal, and we do see people lose weight on the program. I don't call this a weight loss program because honestly, I don't want people who just are looking for weight loss. I don't want quick fix people. And people who are only after weight loss and don't really, if you don't understand this, look, being underweight is a bit like underweight where like you look at somebody and you're like, you're too skinny. Like that doesn't look healthy. You can see this. We all can see this. It's like when the vision of urine pops into your head, it's yellow. Nobody thinks of clear when you think of pee. If somebody says, what does urine look like? You go yellow, right? So if you say somebody's too skinny, like, you know what that means, right? We can all see that. Somebody's too heavy. We've gotten used to it these days, but you can still see if somebody's too heavy. Neither of these states is healthy. The whole idea of healthy obesity, that's just Marxist lunacy. It is. There's no such thing. It's an excess storage of toxins. So we do see people lose weight on the program when they're not necessarily trying to, because their body is finally detoxing all that body fat. And then it goes, we don't need to keep this anymore. You ever known somebody who tries really hard to lose weight and they're restricting calories and they don't lose any weight? Why would their body struggle to keep on all that body fat in spite of not having enough calories? Because their body fat's really, really toxic. They can't, if they dump out that body fat, they dump out all the toxins in the body fat. And so their body will do whatever it can to keep that body fat on. Doing diet after diet after diet after diet. Usually, if you all recall, we've seen this before. Almost all of you have probably seen this in yourself or in other people. The first diet works great. And then people usually regain it. Are they still toxic? Probably. And then the second time they do a diet or their new diet works about half as well. And the third time they do the diet, it doesn't work hardly at all, maybe a couple pounds. And then all the diets after that, they go, I can't lose weight. I'm just giving up. I can't. I do diet after diet and none of it works. Why would that happen? Because they didn't deal with the toxicity. Their fad diet may have made them more toxic. I saw a weight loss supplement the other day, and I just recognized every ingredient in it slowed down ALDH. They slowed down their bile production, and they were saying this could help you lose weight. It helps until it doesn't, and then it ruins your health, and then you start gaining weight, and you can't lose it no matter what you do. Seen it too many times. I actually used to work in the weight loss field, so I have a bit of experience to go on. I would never do weight loss again. That's part of the reason I have no interest in weight loss clients. Their mindset is not right. And what I mean by this is if you want to regain your health, number one, and weight loss is part of that, number two, that's great. But people who come to me and they're just like, I just want to lose weight. No, not interested. Go find other people who will take your money and probably ruin your health in the process. And they can help you. I don't want to do that. So, okay. John, okay. Renas, you had a question. Thank you for the question. My sister uses retinol/tretinoin for skincare. How bad is it? Love your work. Well, thank you very much. Thank you for the super chat. Let me go find my good old Retin-A post. Let's go on to these. For those of you who don't know, I have another page. It'll be in this. It's nutritionrestored.com/blog-forum. It's my old website where I used to post tons and tons of stuff. But I'm going to let me find the veterans. How bad is it? I'm going to put the link here. How bad is Retin-A? There was a study done on U.S. military veterans. So the paper is called Topical Tretinoin Therapy and All-Cause Mortality. That's an interesting start to a study, right? The link's too long. I can't put it there. So you're just going to have to go to the, and I'm not going to go do a short link. Go to that link that I just put, the Nutrition Restored forum, the research forum, I call it. Then you can see it. So the paper is called Topical Tretinoin Therapy and All-Cause Mortality. Objective: to evaluate the relation of topical tretinoin, Retin-A, a commonly used retinoid cream, with all-cause mortality in the Veterans Affairs Topical Tretinoin Chemo Prevention Trial. Chemo prevention. Using chemicals to prevent. Better living through chemistry. Let me just cover a couple things here. Retin-A, tretinoin, those are the drug names or the generic drug name for all trans retinoic acid, ATRA. Whenever you see a study that mentions, when they just use the word retinoic acid, this is typically what they refer to. Vitamin A you eat, some of it, any kind of provitamin A, carotenoid, like beta-carotene, retinol, retinaldehyde, and they turn into retinoic acids. Some of the vitamin A you eat ends up as all trans retinoic acid. So if you are eating vitamin A, you are basically eating some Retin-A. If you eat, same thing with isotretinoin Accutane. If you are eating vitamin A, some of it turns into 13-cis-retinoic acid, which is the same compound as Accutane. If you eat vitamin A, you are eating these retinoid drugs. It's the same thing. I've shown studies showing this, that like where people eat vegetables, high vitamin A vegetables, and then later their ATRA levels, their all-trans retinoic acid levels, are elevated in the blood. Okay? This is not debatable. Okay. Here we go. This is a funny thing. Patients, a total of 1,131 veterans were randomized. Their mean age was 71 years. This is an important part. Patients with a very high estimated short-term risk of death were excluded. So they took out all the people with a very high estimated short-term risk of death. This is really important to the next part. What did they do? Application of tretinoin twice daily to the face and ears. Main outcome measures. Death, which was not contemplated as an endpoint in the original study design. What? Results. The intervention was terminated 6 months early because of an excessive number of deaths in the tretinoin-treated group. After adjusting for these imbalances, the difference in mortality between the randomized groups remained statistically significant. Conclusions: we observed an association of topical tretinoin therapy with death. But remember, patients with a very high estimated short-term risk of death were excluded. So they even took out the people they thought might die soon. They even took those people out. We observed an association of topical tretinoin therapy with death. Retinol gets absorbed in your skin and it turns into Retin-A inside of you. Anything you put on your skin, you should assume it's the same as eating it in a certain way. You're going to absorb a certain amount of it into your bloodstream. Let's go look at sunscreens. Show you this. Systemic absorption of sunscreen, balancing benefits with unknown harms. Unknown harms. But they're just going to let them keep selling it to you. They don't give a hoot about you. Or they don't want to know the harms because then you might not use it and put it on your skin and absorb it into your bloodstream. Let's see. Oh, wait, this is not the one I wanted. This is not the paper I wanted. Let me go find. You see, they just said unknown harms, right? Oh, here it is. Effect of sunscreen application on plasma concentration of sunscreen active ingredients, a randomized clinical trial. So they're putting sunscreen on their skin, and then later they're measuring how much of these active ingredients are in the blood. Okay. Let's see. I just want to make this simple. Conclusions and relevance. In this study conducted in a clinical pharmacology unit and examining sunscreen application among healthy participants, all 6 of the tested active ingredients administered in 4 different sunscreen formulations were systemically absorbed and had plasma concentrations that surpassed the FDA threshold for potentially waiving some of the additional safety studies for sunscreens. But what do they add at the end? Wait. These findings do not indicate that individuals should refrain from the use of sunscreen. We don't want to hurt industry too bad. These scientists want to be able to get a job later. If you put it on your skin, assume it's going into your blood. If you wouldn't eat it, don't put it on your skin. That's the simplest way to do it. Like, think about those. I mean, guys, think about those body sprays and colognes and, oh God, like I had some of the stuff that I got recommended some products to try. And I was like, I looked at the ingredient list and I was like, nope. Something polymers and all sorts of stuff. I was like, no, not touching it. Nope. Not going to do it. They want you sick, infertile, and dead. I'm just out here saying it. Everybody else is ignoring the everyday things that everybody's doing. Everybody's focused on, the shots and big pharma and all this stuff. Those are easy to avoid. Everybody's eating vitamin A like it's going out of style. Everybody's getting way too much copper and not enough zinc. People are not, especially ladies, most of you are not eating enough protein. You need protein to detox to make binding proteins and antibodies. If you look up antibodies, they're proteins. So, how bad is it? A study was stopped 6 months early because of excessive deaths. That's how bad it is. But then you go on the internet and there'll be tons of like backtracking and they're all like, no, it wasn't the Retin-A. It wasn't that. It wasn't that. No, it couldn't have been that. There was methodology things and whatever. And then there was three. Oh, let me go find the beta-carotene studies that were stopped. Hold on. So if you think, oh, well, that's just pharmaceutical retinoic acid. There have been 3 studies on beta-carotene, what makes carrots orange. There have been 3 studies that have been stopped on beta-carotene. They don't always tell us the reasons, though. Why would they not want to tell us the reasons? Well, let's go. So I linked to the research forum, which has the 3 papers linked. The paper, Antioxidant Vitamin Supplementation and Mortality, that's death. A randomized trial in head and neck cancer patients. So this is from their intro part. 3 trials testing specifically beta-carotene supplementation showed moderate, often not statistically significant, which how can it be moderate and not statistically significant, increases in all-cause and cancer mortality. 3 trials have shown moderate increases in all-cause and cancer mortality, risk of death. Here's from that paper. We conducted a randomized controlled trial with alpha tocopherol, an alcohol, interesting, and beta-carotene supplements among 540 head and neck cancer patients treated by radiation therapy. Supplementation with beta-carotene was discontinued during the trial. Weird. Continuing, concerns about adverse effects of beta-carotene supplementation prompted the investigators to halt the use of beta-carotene after the first 156 patients had been enrolled. Wait, they had 540 patients. But they stopped the beta-carotene after 156 people had been enrolled. And the paper is about mortality. So let's go to these other papers that they talked about. So this is the effect of vitamin E and beta-carotene on the incidence of lung cancer and other cancers in male smokers. This is one of the ones that the media loves to use to demonize supplements. Do you know that the 3 supplements the media loves to demonize that people didn't seem to pay attention to? Vitamin A, retinol, or retinol esters, retinol palmitate, beta-carotene, and vitamin E. Basically, beta-carotene breaks down into retinaldehyde, 2 retinaldehydes. 1 beta-carotene turns into 2 retinaldehydes. Those retinaldehydes can then turn into retinols, which are alcohols, and vitamin E is an alcohol as well. Weird. So here we go from that paper. Unexpectedly, we observed a higher incidence of lung cancer among the men who received beta-carotene than among those who did not. Change in incidence, 18%. Total mortality, number of deaths, right, was 8% higher among the participants who received beta-carotene than among those who did not. Primarily because there were more deaths from lung cancer and ischemic heart disease. Gosh, has there been a virus going around that seemed to cause a lot of lung problems and heart problems? I don't know. Have you heard of the virus going around that causes that? It's associated with that? That'd be weird. What could connect them all? Did you remember the COVID and vitamin A paper I just went over? And how does vitamin A get into your blood? Through leaky bile? Weird. Here's the next paper. Effects of a combination of beta-carotene and vitamin A on lung cancer and cardiovascular disease. The effects of a combination of 30 milligrams of beta-carotene per day and 25,000 units of retinol, vitamin A, in the form of retinol palmitate per day on the primary endpoint, the incidence of lung cancer, were compared with those of placebo. Continuing, On the basis of these findings, the randomized trial was stopped 21 months earlier than planned. Conclusion: after an average of 4 years of supplementation, the combination of beta-carotene and vitamin A had no benefit and may have had an adverse effect on the incidence of lung cancer and on the risk of death from lung cancer, cardiovascular disease, and any cause in smokers and workers exposed to asbestos. Somebody's gonna be like, but they were exposed to asbestos. Well, they were just more toxic, so they died sooner. You add more toxins to a toxic person, they die even sooner. This is just math, right? Here, next paper, beta-carotene supplementation and incidence of cancer and cardiovascular disease, the Women's Health Study. Here we go, in their background section. However, the few randomized trials of beta-carotene supplementation show no overall benefits. Some even suggest harm. This trial was designed to test the effects of beta-carotene supplementation in women. Under methods, the beta-carotene component was terminated early after a median treatment duration of 2.1 years. Why did they stop it? Do they say why? Continuing, the beta-carotene component of the trial was terminated early on January 18th, 1996, primarily because of the null findings on beta-carotene and cancer incidence after 12 years of randomized treatment from a companion trial of 22,071 male health professionals in the Physician's Health Study. In addition, 2 other trials had suggested that beta-carotene may even be associated with harmful effects among individuals at high risk for lung cancer, and there's 3 references there. What do null findings mean? Primarily because of the null findings on beta-carotene. Null findings mean that what they found doesn't support their hypothesis. It means they were trying to prove something in the paper, and their findings didn't support it. And they're not going to tell you, but they terminated that part of the trial. There's a paper here that I link. Why null results do not mean no results. Negative findings have implications for policy, practice, and research. Now, the authors are going to try to say that there was no statistically significant differences in disease rates or mortality, but they stopped. They terminated the beta-carotene part. Let me just run through some of these numbers. So they put the numbers of deaths, or they put the numbers of disease and death. Let's just run through the numbers, because when they try to say things are not statistically significant, some of us who see patterns can go, that's an interesting pattern. So all cancers for the supplemented group. So whenever I give you the first number, that's the supplemented group. The second number is the unsupplemented group, okay? All cancers, 378 versus 369. Years 1 and 2 combined cancers, 219 versus 214. Years 3 and 4 combined cancers, 159 versus 155. Deaths from cancer, 31 versus 28. Stroke, 61 versus 43. Death from cardiovascular causes, 14 versus 12. All important cardiovascular events, 116 versus 102. Years 1 and 2 combined all important cardiovascular events, 74 versus 65. Years 3 and 4 combined all important cardiovascular events, 42 versus 37. Death from any cause, 59 versus 55. Did you see a pattern there? Did you see a pattern? And the unsupplemented people, it doesn't mean they were avoiding vitamin A. It just means they were eating normal amounts. And a paper summarizing all of the beta-carotene nonsense. The National Cancer Institute mounted a substantial program of population-based trials in the early 1980s. Both major lung cancer chemoprevention trials, chemoprevention, they did that with Retin-A too. You remember that word? Chemoprevention trials not only showed no benefit, but had significant increases in lung cancer incidence and in cardiovascular and total mortality. from, I think these were their conclusions. Number 3, discouragement of beta-carotene supplement use due to adverse effects in smokers and no evidence of benefits in non-smokers. It's pretty wild, right? But then you have the gurus out there saying, well, synthetic beta-carotene is different than natural beta-carotene. No, it's not. You cannot chemically show that. You can't. And then if somebody says, well, supplements of beta-carotene cause problems where natural amounts don't. Well, almost everybody's eating the natural stuff. So obviously, if somebody's supplementing it, they're getting even more. Did you see what happened in the trial with all the deaths? When they got even more than normal, they died more than normal, but the other people were still dying. Plenty. Natural versus synthetic in the world of vitamin A. There's no difference. I've shown this. I have a video on this channel about it, and I did a whole Twitter thread on it. Oh, and then also, Renas, I did a Twitter thread on comparing. Let me find the Twitter thread. I normally don't go and find my Twitter threads, but because this is exactly one of the topics I did one on, I did another one on. If you look in my pinned thread, you'll find all these threads. Wait, let me find it. There it is. So I go over the vitamin A topically and how there's actually European organizations who have shown that they were basically saying the European population is dangerously close to toxic levels of vitamin A from what they eat already. And then people are going and putting topical on top of that, and that raises levels significantly. I forget where it was, but certain European countries have banned vitamin A in certain cosmetics. We don't do that here. The US is just like, poison yourself all the way out, do it as many times as you can, as many ways as you can. We don't care. The industry loves you. Keep buying our stuff. So that's that. So I put that thread in there for you, Renas. Thank you for the super chat. And they'll just use beta-carotene as colorings, right? They use it as a natural food color. They love you so much. They love you so much, they're going to put vitamins and phytonutrients in your food for you to color it because it's natural. Consume at your own risk. So John had a question. There it is. Thank you, John, for the super chat. He says, my bowel movements practically stopped for about 10 days during COVID and was very pale. What do you make of it? Doesn't seem like my body was detoxing. Okay. What is it that gives your bile, your poop, its brown color? You can look this up. It's bilirubin. Bilirubin. Okay. So what you're saying, here's my interpretation of what's going on. And you could look up pale stools, and that's like the bile is not getting into your guts. Wait. If you had, okay, sorry, let me back up here. I'm not going to go find the link to the paper, but I have a paper that showed that pooping frequency. They looked at pooping frequency, diarrhea, constipation, normal, or what they call normal, which is pretty pathetic. They'll be like, oh, if you crap once every 2 days, you're normal. And I'm like, health today is such a joke. Like, if you're not pooping once a day, you got a real problem, and you should be pooping more than once a day. Done. If you're not pooping once a day, you got real issues. You should poop at the very minimum once a day, preferably 2 or 3, depending upon how many meals you eat. So, What they found in that paper, I don't remember the units. I'm just going to give you some, these are like the general numbers that I remember from the paper. Normal people, normal pooping, they measured the bile in the poop. Normal pooping people had, say that 5 times fast, right? Normal pooping people had about 500 units of bile in their poop. Constipated people had about 200 units of bile in their poop. Folks with diarrhea had about 1,200 units of bile in their poop. Are you seeing a pattern? If I were to say that bile is toxic and your body really wanted to get rid of it and you had a lot of bile in your poop, would that make sense? It would be diarrhea. And let's say bile is kind of the trigger for pooping. Your body goes, I don't like this bile. Let's move it along through. And if there's not enough bile, your body doesn't really work on pooping. So normal 500, constipation 200, diarrhea 1,200. So what I'm saying is that the toxic bile, when you got sick, remember, the toxic bile is what eats the holes in the bile pathway. And that's how the bile gets into your blood. So this is toxic bile theory at its root. You're saying your pooping slowed down drastically. Your poop went pale. Poop is brown because of bilirubin. Okay, so were you getting a lot of bile in your poop? But you were having symptoms, systemic symptoms. What was causing those? Bile in your blood? I'm saying it's a big bile dump, and the symptoms of CUFID are bile in your blood. If you had diarrhea during that, then I'd say you're dumping a lot of bile. It's making it into your intestines, and your intestines are going, get this stuff out of here right now. What was one of my big symptoms when I had this nonsense? I got nausea. I didn't want to eat for about however many days it was. And then after that, the nausea. Where was the bile for me? It was in my stomach. That was after the body aches went away. Why would I have systemic body aches? Gosh, what's causing all the stiffness and the achiness? Something's in my blood going to all the muscles. Does it make sense now? So bile was not going into your intestines. So you didn't poop. And when you did poop, it was very pale because there was no bilirubin in there. It went into your bloodstream. So you got systemic symptoms. Why did that happen in that? Why did yours go like that? If you already had health problems, which usually if people are here listening to me, they got health problems. Nothing wrong with that. We're all trying to fix them, right? So you already had cholestasis. You already had toxic leaky bile. And then think about it. You know how I talked about picking the scab? Well, what if all of a sudden you have this cut and then you have something trigger a giant bile dump and you just cut the cut deeper? Right? So now the flood damage. You have one flood, you know, or you live in a place that floods all the time. So people kind of get used to it. They can rebuild pretty quickly because they've moved everything out of the flood path. And then all of a sudden you have a giant flood and it causes even more damage. But this is the bile went into your blood and caused the symptoms. The bile was not going into your intestines, which is why you didn't poop and why your poop was very pale. So that is that. Let me go and look for any more super chats. I think I'm going to have to wrap it up because I got to get to the inner circle. Somebody asked about the inner circle link. For those of you who are in the sorry, let me just say this. Thank you for all the super chats today. That was great. I don't see any more super chats. The inner circle. So for those of you who don't know what the inner circle is, the inner circle, I'm going to go do that right now. I'm going to go answer all the questions that people who are in the inner circle ask for about another hour, hour and a half, 2 hours. So if you wonder how well my brain's working, I do this, and then I go right into another hour, hour and a half, 2 hours of answering questions. So if you want your brain fog to go away, you might want to pay attention here. Seems like it's working, for me at least. So get enough potassium too. Potassium really helps the brain when it's not functioning well from things like, vitamin A toxicity, copper toxicity, vitamin D supplement toxicity. I just did a thread on Twitter on using sunlight or UV light to raise vitamin D. May want to go check that one out. I got to put that in my pinned thread. I don't think that's in my pinned thread yet. I'm going to do a thread very soon here on non-vitamin D things that raise vitamin D levels, which would be very interesting because if you ever saw my vitamin D deficiency doesn't exist thread on Twitter, you will see that things like when people get enough protein, starving people, we're talking about malnourished people, especially when they don't get enough meat. So these malnourished people, when they started getting more protein, their vitamin A levels in the blood went up, but they weren't giving them vitamin A. They just got more protein. Why did their vitamin A levels go up? When they gave these malnourished people zinc, their vitamin A levels went up. It doesn't make any sense. Why was giving nutrients, minerals, and protein raise a fat-soluble vitamin level in the blood? Where'd it come from? Maybe it was stored in the liver and they really didn't have vitamin A deficiency. And then the funny thing is in the vitamin D thread on how to raise it with other minerals, zinc raises vitamin D levels also. Weird. So does magnesium. Your vitamin D levels are an indicator of something else going on. One big thing, if you're worried about low vitamin D levels, would be to fix your magnesium deficiency and fix your zinc deficiency. How do we fix that? We test, we don't guess, and then we address. That's what we do. We don't play games. We're doing this scientifically. So we watch labs and we watch people's reactions. Because if you've ever had a doctor or a practitioner who goes by the labs and you're sitting there telling them, I don't feel good doing this. I feel like I'm getting worse. And the practitioner's just looking at your labs. They're not even looking at you, right? They're looking at your labs and they're going, well, your labs look great. So just keep doing it. And you're like, I feel worse than I did before I came here. And you're going to tell me to keep doing the things that make me feel worse. And they're like, yeah, your levels are coming up. This is great. Unbelievable. What am I more interested in? How somebody feels. If they start something and they don't feel good, we need to be talking about it. And we need to be figuring out what the right dose is for that person. They may not need very much at all. They may not tolerate it yet. Somebody might need a lot more. Like I know I need a ton of zinc. I just do. So that's what we got today. Let me just see that nobody snuck in. Wouldn't be the worst thing in the world, but yeah, I got to get to... Okay, so the inner circle. Sorry about that. For those of you who are in the Love Your Liver program. So remember, madnessofmodernnutrition.com, that's the free course. If you decide to pay for the Love Your Liver program and go inside the whole network where you get access to all the stuff, well, at least all the other unpaid stuff and the other stuff in the network, like the Love Your Liver program. The inner circle is where I answer questions for, hour and a half, 2 hours. That link is now in the home space of the network. So if you're in the network, look in the main menu, go under home, and it's in one of the featured articles at the top. That's where you can find it. I had a little problem with the signups in the program, so I had to fix that. So it disappeared for a little while, and now it's back. It's in the home space on the network. Oh, Tudka. No, don't do Tudka. On that note, don't take a secondary bile acid to try to fix a bile problem. It's a funny... I'm just going to do one little analogy before I go. For those people out there on the internet, the gurus and other science people who would say that, let's say you took Accutane or you took Retin-A and you got health problems. Do you realize that there are people out there who will say you took a super toxic... If you look at the side effects of Accutane and the side effects of Retin-A, and the black box warnings about how they tell women you need to do 2 forms of birth control so that you don't get pregnant, because this drug is so toxic to the developing human inside of you that we're going to make you sign a pledge to use 2 forms of birth control. How toxic is it? Do you actually think that that's not toxic? So they'll say that if you take these I lost my train of thought. Damn it. Oh, if you take these retinoid drugs and then later you get health problems, these retinoid drugs actually caused you to now, you can't metabolize vitamin A properly, and now you have a vitamin A deficiency. Is that not the stupidest thing you've ever heard? You took a super toxic form of vitamin A and it damaged your vitamin A metabolism, and now you can't metabolize vitamin A right, and now you have a vitamin A deficiency. Let me do this another, because retinol's an alcohol, right? Retinol's an alcohol. Do we need alcohols to live? Interesting question. So here's somebody who drank too much ethanol, alcohol, so much that they damaged their liver. Following me? And then you have Brainiac come out and say, well, you obviously damaged your liver and your metabolism of alcohol with all that alcohol, and now you have an alcohol deficiency. You have an alcohol deficiency. You need to obviously drink more alcohol because you damaged your liver with alcohol. And alcohol is the solution to your problem. It's the same thing. They're both alcohols. They both damage your liver. There are people out there, I want to tell you, there are people out there who say there is no such thing as vitamin A toxicity, only vitamin A deficiency. There was some Brainiac wannabe scientist trying to go on my Twitter saying that it's all just deficiency. Those of you who have poisoned yourself, many of you here know that that guy's a lunatic. There are people out there who say there's no such thing as copper toxicity. There is only copper deficiency. Those people are damaging people left and right. If you are out there and you believed either of these things, bioavailable copper, you're welcome to come into the Love Your Liver network and fix all the damage that was caused. You're obviously interested in your health. That's why you got into it in the first place. And we are here to undo the bad guidance that you got. We undo a lot of damage from a lot of other health approaches. You try to do it on your own, maybe you'll get it right, maybe you won't, but we got 1,700 plus people in the Love Your Liver network who can help you with their experiences. And the network is really the social media was supposed to be. People helping each other out in common goals. Most Facebook groups for health, oh my, you all know the disasters that those are. Certain protocol groups, if you go into them and you tell them that their approaches didn't help you or their approaches are making you worse, they'll just kick you out because you're speaking against the protocol. Anyway, that is all I have for today. Hope you all enjoyed it. I know I don't get through too many questions because we hit those questions pretty hard, and I like to show the evidence and the logic behind all of them. So again, if you want to find me on social media, or you want to find my website, or you want to find my supplement store, we got exciting stuff coming out. That's nutritiondetective.com. Like I said, the Love Your Liver program is at members.nutritiondetective.com. There's also Madness of Modern Nutrition. And just a fun little aside, I do have the websites vitaminadetox.com and vitaminatoxicity.com. Those just take you back to my main website, but I do have those domains. So that's just a fun little thing. So, oh, wait, I want to answer this question real quick. I'm just going to post a link and then I got to go. Caroline Yunker, Caroline. She's saying half the population is pre-diabetic or diabetic. What's the cause of that? What is the cause? What is the solution? I'm going to link my Twitter thread in the chat. There has been a mountain of evidence connecting vitamin A with diabetes and prediabetes. A mountain of it. And when you go and you look on the thread, you'll see this is a huge thing. Now, I want to tell you, this is just an important thing to understand. If you damage, so here's the kicker. Toxins that come into you slow down your detox system of any type. They generally slow down your detox system over time. There was a study on mice where they gave them alcohol, and they found that in the young mice, it sped up ALDH when they drank alcohol. But the old mice, alcohol slowed down ALDH. I've talked about this before. What's the difference between young people drinking alcohol and old people drinking alcohol in terms of hangovers? You should know. Young people seem to get away with it until their late 20s, early 30s usually. And then as the older you get, the less you want to, generally drink because the hangovers get really bad. They suck. So, vitamin A is an alcohol. It damages your liver. Your liver is more important in the regulation of blood sugar than it's ever been given credit for. Vitamin A damages the pancreas. Oh, yeah, I go over studies showing that pancreatitis is caused by vitamin A toxicity. Wow, inflammation of the pancreas. Gosh, if that went on long enough, do you think it could ruin the pancreas? Yeah, I go over. Just go read the thread. It's one of my patented or my trademark 60 tweet threads with references all through it, showing patterns. And if people don't want to see the logical pattern, I can't help you. People who don't want to look at the logic, and if you want mainstream science to come out and show you that vitamin A is bad for your blood sugar, if you want them to come out with that, you're going to be waiting forever. Because could you imagine the lawsuits that they've been adding vitamin A to milk all this time? Now they're adding beta-carotene as a food coloring. Could you imagine the lawsuits that would happen? Would they ever allow that to happen? No. They're even telling you that a chemical spill in Ohio is not toxic. How big of a jump is it to think that they wouldn't tell you that vitamin A that they're adding to foods is toxic, that they're allowing you to put on your face, that they got Twitter people encouraging everybody to eat liver and 30 egg yolks a day? They're not going to tell you anything. They're going to tell you the opposite of the truth. We live in times of the greatest deceit, which is why I'm starting to get knocked down in social media. Right? So keep spreading the word. If you want to spread the word, one of the ways you can do it is to subscribe to the channel, to like this video. If you were here doing the live chat, that's great. If you're here watching this later, leave a comment. Can be super short, could be one word, could be an emoji, could be whatever, but just leaving a comment really helps. Some of you have been really helping out with that. I really appreciate it. Share this with people. If you can't share it, a lot of social media is very combative right now. So if you want to share it with people, share it in their private messages, share it in their, send it to them by email, send the links to them via posting some of these links. I post them on social media, but just realize that these will get hammered down. That's what they're doing to it. So thank you all for coming. It was a fun day. I'll probably do these more often now, but if I get a really good topic and a really good testimonial, I'll still keep going back to them. So I'll see you all next time. Have a great weekend. Bye now.